think for a second year guy, I would almost, if I'm an Eagles fan, I'd always almost like that better because you kind of let the players, be the headlines and because if the coach is in the headlines all the time, I feel like it's not usually a good thing. And I get you have these young wonder kind coaches, McVay and Shanahan and Matt LaFleur, but I think for Sirianni, he should be content with, you know what, I've come in here, first year we surprised and went to the playoffs.
There he is, my man, Kyle Stackpole, NFL draft editor, CBS Sports. Are we working together tonight, by the way?
We're not. I'm actually off tonight, so I will be enjoying the game from my couch. But we'll be working Sundays all year long, so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's going to be a fun year. Last year we had a blast. Did Washington call you to play tight end yet, by the way?
Yeah, really. They're calling everyone.
I mean, who is going to be the tight end? Is it going to be Bates?
Yeah, it's going to be Bates. And then you have a couple rookies behind him while Logan Thomas gets ready to go. They actually have liked what they've seen from Cole Turner, their draft pick, and a couple undrafted guys, Armani Rogers and Curtis Hodges. So they have initially they kept 5 tight ends on the 53-man roster. They've since moved one of them to IR, but I think they're just looking for somebody to step up while Logan Thomas is out. But I think Bates can be – he's not Logan Thomas, but he can at least be something and be somewhat of a threat for that offense.
You were at Commanders camp. We heard the reports Carson Wentz was inaccurate, but I've heard that the last 5 years. I mean, I've reported that at Eagles camp before. How really did he look?
Yeah, he looked fine. He didn't blow me away, and I don't think he blew anyone else away that was at camp every single day. You can just, based on what Washington has had at quarterback the last 5 years, before since Kirk Cousins left, Carson Wentz is an upgrade because those quarterbacks just have not been NFL level starters. And so the fact that you have a former number 2 pick, he definitely looks the part with his size and his arm strength. And while his accuracy was inconsistent, and he had days where he threw some nice balls and he had other days where he was missing high. So I think that it's all relative with Washington. You look at this quarterback and you say, okay, he's better than what we had for the past 5 years. But the question is, can he get you where you want to go, which is being a Super Bowl contender? And I don't know. I didn't see it in training camp, but it doesn't matter really in training camp if he turns it on when the games come on. But I'm definitely skeptical, and I think fans should definitely be cautiously optimistic as they start the season with Wentz under center.
This is what's scary about Washington. I think they could be a playoff team, but when you kind of talk to Commanders fans, I know a couple from the DC area, Virginia. They just don't seem that excited about this football team this year.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, too, is the defense a couple of years ago was ranked basically top 5 across the board. It's what carried them to an NFC East title, whatever that means that year with all those teams just being not very good. But then last year, the defense was supposed to be even better, and they were just horrible, and they could not get off the field on third down, and that was the biggest thing that basically, screwed them out of a lot of games. And while they made a lot of offensive changes this year, they didn't really do much on defense. And even in the preseason, the first team defense just could not get off the field. And if you can't get off the field on third down, then that just extends drives. That makes the defense more tired. That allows the other opposing offense to eat up more clock. And I think people are excited about the offense because, Wentz is a good quarterback relative to what they've had. And their skill players actually are pretty decent, especially when you add Jahan Dotson, who's looked better than I think what some people gave him credit for. When he got picked 16th overall. But I think it's really that defense because they have the pieces to be solid, but the preseason hasn't given anyone confidence that they're going to be able to get off the field on third down this year. Does
a lot of this, too, have to do with FedEx Field, Dan Snyder? I mean, there's a lot of reasons to not like the Washington Commanders, even though they are – it seems like, at least in football operations, they're led by the right people. Yeah, it's all those distractions. I mean, any fan you talk to is just – they just want the season to come. It's like whether it's good or bad because of all the other stuff that's going on. But
And I think they are excited. I think Washington fans, they are might be more optimistic just because they've dealt with this for so long. They're like, please, like, let the football season be decent so we can just stop dealing with all the congressional stuff and all the other allegations and just everything clouding over this franchise. But the issue is there's not a lot to be super, super excited about. And it's even if they were able to sneak into the playoffs this year, it's like, are they able to, the goal is a Super Bowl. And if it's not sneaking into the playoffs at, 10-7 or 9-8. So I think they get really excited for week one because they say, okay, we can just focus on football now. But I don't know. We'll see what happens this year. And if they lose, especially because they have the first two games, they have the Jaguars and Lions. So fans are thinking, oh, easy, like we'll go 2-0. But those other fan bases are thinking the same thing. Washington's a winnable game. And so I think that, the Jaguars, Carson Wentz's nemesis, if they come out and beat Washington week one, then all hell's going to break loose.
I'm glad you brought up the Jaguars because I think they have an opportunity to win this game, right? I like what Trevor Lawrence has brought to the table. I like what this football team has done with Doug Peterson, and yet it feels like there's such an unknown, quite honestly.
Yeah, there is a lot of unknowns with them, and but I think people. It's almost like they almost forget that Lawrence was seen as like the best quarterback prospect since like Andrew Luck came out, and then you had Urban Meyer, and he struggles, and everyone just assumed that he stinks now. But you have someone like Doug Peterson, who is a very quality coach. They did a lot of work in free agency. They went out and got a bunch of receivers. They beefed up the defense, and I think people are really underestimating the Jaguars. And I actually think I've been looking at the betting markets, and the Jaguars have started to get some money, and I think it's down under a field goal now. I think basically that should be viewed as more of a pick 'em. I think the only thing with Jacksonville, it might take some time for them all to gel with all these new pieces. So I think that works in Washington's favor. It would be better for them to play them week one than say week 8 when Lawrence has gotten more comfortable in that offense. But I think it's going to be a back and forth game, and it's just going to be. I think it's going to come down to, ironically, if Carson Wentz can make a couple plays late to either keep the drive alive or score a game-winning touchdown. And he says it's just another game, but it's more than that. He's got to if he's able to play well against the Jaguars after what happened last year, that's going to give him a ton of confidence going into the rest of the year. And on the other side, if he struggles and Washington loses, then that's just going to. People in Washington are going to say, oh, well, he's just continuing what he did in Indianapolis and in that last year in Philadelphia. And where are we going this year?
One thing I've learned about Carson Wentz over the years is, and I was sick of it by his 5th year in Philly, but he still gives the cliche answers. Like you said, it's just another game. I'm like, dude, Carson, like, you got to give something other than that. And I feel like that really hurts his vibe in the locker room. Like, people don't realize it, but it does gravitate toward other players. And I don't think Washington knows that yet, but last year with the Colts, he had those answers too, even at the end of the year, while Jim Irsay, Chris Ballard are just ripping this guy to shreds, and Reich's sort of defending him, not really, but like Washington's doing all the right things in terms of getting him, but still, like, it's like you said, it's just another game, or it's just our opponent, or I like to thank Doug Pearson for all he's done for me. I'm like, oh, you didn't want to play with him in the first place.
Yeah, I know. And you just want you want these guys to be human, and especially when they struggle. You want them to own their struggles, or you want them to say, hey, I messed this up, I can play better, or even address the inconsistencies like in camp. Like, I haven't been as accurate as I wanted to be, but I'm working on at least just admit it instead of just saying, oh, it's just a practice, we're getting ready for the game. Because at that point, people just tune you out. Like, oh, Carson Wentz is at the podium every Wednesday. He's not going to say much, so whatever. We'll just see what he does on Sundays. He just doesn't seem to have – doesn't have the personality that really – where you can get behind him. At least, in my opinion, just viewing him from afar in a couple press conferences, he's just – if he was, Aaron Rodgers or, a top 10 QB, then those answers will be fine because all right, he'll end up figuring it out on Sunday. But when you have a quarterback that has struggled like he has the past couple of years, and then he gives these vanilla answers and isn't being publicly accountable for, maybe when he makes some mistakes, then that's going to get the fan base pretty riled up quickly.
If it doesn't work this year in Washington, what is his future? Does he accept the backup role, or does he go to Donovan McNabb route and you just never hear from him again?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'd assume he wanna stay in the league. I mean, since he's still like he's still young by QB standards. Excuse me, we've got a plane flying by here pretty
Oh,
early, right near Dulles Airport. But yeah, that's going to be interesting because and Washington too has just been they've been so behind him. They've just been hyping him up from Coach Rivera to the GM. And there was actually a great story in the Washington Post, and it was like 4 quotes from the past 5 years, and it said guess whose quotes these were. And I just assumed they were all from Carson Wentz, just Washington fans, hyping him up. But it was Alex Smith, a quote about Alex Smith one year, a quote about Case Keenum. It was all the same thing. So they're all just saying the same thing, but at that point it doesn't matter. People are excited because of what Ron is saying, but it doesn't mean much until he's on the field and you look what he's able to accomplish. So if he gets off to a bad start and Washington puts in Taylor Heineke, then I don't know what happens to Wentz. I really don't. And I don't know if he's. I mean, I feel like you might know him a little better than me, just being in Philadelphia. I don't know what his personality is like. Is he willing to accept a backup role? But it's going to get really dicey if he doesn't perform well these first 4 games.
Tell you what, he did not like when the Eagles traded to Jalen Hurts in the second round. And this is what I loved about Jalen Hurts from the get-go. Jalen Hurts walked in there like, not that he wanted to be the starting quarterback, but he walked in with that confidence. Like, okay, look, like, I'm going to get people to gravitate toward me. He didn't mean to divide anything. That's just the personality he brings. He's one of those guys you turn to as a leader. Wentz, I feel like unless you're an offensive lineman, and I always gave Carson credit for this. He always gave credit to his offensive line, helped his offense. If you're an offensive lineman, you love Carson Wentz. But if you're Jahan Dotson, you're Terry McLaurin, I'm sure they're going to love him because he's better than anything they've dealt with. But overall, like in Philly, Alshon Jeffrey wasn't a fan. I don't think Golden Tate was a fan of the guy at all. I think they all wanted Nick Foles to be the quarterback at some point.
Yeah, I think Terry is going to love him based on what he's had to deal with his first 3 years. But even people have been making a big deal about how early in training camp how they weren't connecting and how Terry McLaurin missing OTAs is really going to affect their chemistry. And it's like they'll figure that out. Like that's Terry McLaurin is not the issue. But yeah, I get what you're saying about the difference between Hurts and Wentz. I feel like Wentz being that number 2 overall pick and then really performing at that kind of level that he did in, before he got hurt. I think that was 2017. So I think after that, he maybe got complacent or maybe thought, yeah, I'm the guy. I figured this out. Like we got Philly's going to go to a Super Bowl. Then he gets hurt. Then Foles comes in and they win a Super Bowl. And all of a sudden he's on the outskirts now. And everyone's like, oh, we don't need Wentz anymore. And I think that's really weighed on him the past couple of years. But I think if this is the year where if he's going to turn around, then it's going to happen because if the guy who had him performing at an MVP level in Frank Reich wasn't able to get enough out of him in 1 year in Indianapolis, how can that not be a wake-up call that this is your last chance, man? Like, it doesn't matter if you're the number 2 overall pick. That was years ago. And there are new guys coming into this league that are performing way better than you have the past couple of years. So if he's able to recognize that and, take coaching and really, be hard on himself and take critiques, then he has the talent to put it together. I mean, we've seen it. It's just been a while. And he's got to know that there's nothing else being given to him. This is his last chance served on a silver platter. And if not, then, he's going to be out of there. There's
another guy that used to be in the NFC East. He's not anymore. His coach, Frank Reich. I mean, Reich's a good coach. I'm not going to deny that. But he basically went out of his way. I don't know if you've seen Invincible when Dick Vermeil grabs Papali and goes, I stuck my neck out for you. You start playing football or you're gone. It seems like that's what Reich did with Wentz. And now I feel like Reich's going to be on the hot seat here because Ryan was Ballard's guy and Irsay's guy. And now if they don't win with Matt Ryan, do you move on from Frank Reich?
Yeah, I think you might have to. I mean, everyone, you hear all the reports, and you think people are high on Carson Wentz in Washington, and then you listen to Indianapolis, and people think that Matt Ryan is the absolute savior that's going to get the Colts to a Super Bowl, undefeated season. Like he's so accurate and he's such a leader. And like I get that he is, and he's an upgrade over what they had in Carson Wentz. But you're right. If this doesn't work again, this is kind of, I think it might be Reich's last stand. If you can't do it with Ryan, and now you've tried it with a bunch of these different guys, then it's a matter of, you know what, we just gotta, try to get a QB in the draft and go from there. And I don't think Reich would be around for that. So that's really interesting. But it's also the fact that it was Irsay's guy, and Irsay after the year was saying to Ballard and Reich, they're like, Wentz has got to go. Like I don't care how much I got to give up. I don't care how much we got to take in salary cap. He's gone. We got to just cut this off. And I think that was an indictment on Reich, because Reich probably was like, yeah, this Wentz is my guy. Like we can win with him. And then this happened. And I feel like the trust might already be a little bit fractured. And if he's unable to perform this year with a roster that is fully capable of going to the playoffs and making a run, even in the really tough AFC, then you're going to have to do some real evaluating and reflecting on, is he the right guy to get Indianapolis where it wants to go?
What's your vibe on Nick Sirianni? I feel like he's one of those guys that he doesn't get talked about as much when we talk about great coaches in this league, maybe because he is a second-year head coach. But when you talk about the Eagles, you're always talking about Jalen Hurts. You're always talking about the talent. But then Nick Sirianni comes up. They're like, wait, he's the Eagles head coach?
Yeah, I think for a second-year guy, I would almost, if I'm an Eagles fan, I would always almost like that better, because you kind of let the players, be the headlines, because if the coach is in the headlines all the time, I feel like it's not usually a good thing. And I get you have these young wonderkind coaches of McVay and Shanahan and Matt LaFleur, but I think for Sirianni, he should be content with, you know what, I've come in here first year, we surprised and went to the playoffs. We added some really good pieces across the board, and now I think they moved to be like the betting favorite in the NFC East now over the Cowboys,
by the way,
which is pretty wild based on where it started this offseason. But I think if the Eagles make a run, then people are going to know Nick Sirianni. If you think about Zach, no one knew who Zach Taylor was last year. Zero. The Bengals head coach. I mean, some people are still.
Last year.
Yeah, some people are still like, wait, who's Zach Taylor? Oh yeah, he's the Bengals coach. And you couldn't pick him out of the lineup. But then they get to the Super Bowl, and now everyone's talking about him. So I just think that it's just a matter of, if they're able to make a run to the NFC Championship, if they're able to make it to the Super Bowl, then plenty of people are going to know about who Nick Sirianni is, or even if they're in contention for a number one seed. I just think he flew under the radar last year because they did, sneak into the playoffs. But I think this is exactly where Sirianni wants to be. And if the team is able to perform, people are going to know who he is.
This is what, to me at least, with the NFC East, I keep saying the Eagles aren't better than the Cowboys until they actually beat the Cowboys. But we have to talk about, are the Eagles better than them, or have they caught them?
I think based on the pieces, I think the Eagles are better, personally. I think the Tyron Smith injury for the Cowboys is huge. You start the year without Michael Gallup, and he's going to come back, but then you lose Amari Cooper, and you got Zeke, who's apparently playing hurt last year, and he's going to be better. But I just don't know. And it's also the defense. I mean, they were unbelievable last year, and Dan Quinn I think he's a great coach and a great defensive mind, but you would think that defense has to at least regress a little bit in terms of the turnovers that they were able to force. So I think it's also just a difference of the Cowboys didn't do much in the offseason and the Eagles did a lot. And so I do think public perception plays a lot into that, and a reason why people just assume that the Eagles are better. I think it's very close. I think the Eagles might have them by a little bit, but you're right. They need to beat them. If they don't beat them the first game, then there's nothing you can say about it. It's the Cowboys division, and that's what you have to live with. But at least the Eagles set themselves up to have a very good chance to beat Dallas, whereas Dallas, based on last year, it feels like they lost more than they gained.
Do you feel Jerry Jones is kind of setting Mike McCarthy up to fail so he can make a run, Sean Payton?
Yeah, that situation's so strange. I I like if Sean Payton's available, I feel like unless McCarthy wins the Super Bowl or gets to the Super Bowl, it's like we're gonna take Sean Payton. Just based on like it seemed like they had a really solid year last year, and everyone. I mean, what he did against the 49ers and his coaching decisions that obviously he got a lot of flack for that, as he should. But they were toe to toe with a team that was a couple plays away from getting to the Super Bowl. It's not like the 49ers were a slouch. They just happened to be in the wild card because they had the Rams
And the Cardinals.
and the Cardinals in the division. Exactly. So it's like, but I think with that playoff game really tarnished what he's capable of in Dallas. And so it's like if they go 10-6 and even they lose in the divisional round or something, or even if they lose in the NFC Championship, I just think in Dallas it's Super Bowl or bust. And if Sean Payton's available, they're going to get him. So it's an unfortunate situation for McCarthy. Even if he deserves to stay with the Cowboys, it's going to take a lot for them not to go after Sean Payton.
And maybe that's my issue with the Cowboys. I had John Stoltz from Bleeding Green Nation on yesterday, and he said, maybe the Cowboys fans and the Cowboys organization need to temper expectations a bit. They haven't been relevant in pretty much our lifetimes, essentially. I was 7 the last time they won a Super Bowl. I barely remember. But overall, it just feels like every year they get talked about. Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. Whether they have a Super Bowl team or not. And this year, I just don't think it's a Super Bowl caliber roster.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it does help that the NFC, I think, is wide open.
Wide open.
It's like if they were in the AFC, I would say, yeah, McCarthy's done. Like even before the year, like they're just not going to win enough games to warrant them not looking somewhere else. I mean, I can respect Jerry Jones and for even though they haven't won so long, just understanding, hey, we have to give ourselves the best chance to win every single year, and going into next year. Is Mike McCarthy the best coach to help us do that? If Sean Payton went somewhere else, I would say, and McCarthy was decent, I would say stick to him. But it's just there's so much pressure. I mean, the Cowboys fans aren't going to temper their expectations. They're Cowboys fans. They're America's team.
They're a different breed.
They're a different breed, and they're never going to forget the greatness that they had, before these last 15 years or so. So I think they're never going to temper their expectations. It's just more about the Cowboys organization needing to give them reason to hope that they can be a Super Bowl team. And I think Cowboys fans are also like wildly optimistic. So I think they still think that the team can be a Super Bowl contender this year. And I think they can make a run. I think they have the talent to do it. But I wouldn't say if I was ranking my top 5 teams to get to the Super Bowl from the NFC, I think they would be just outside it. And there's plenty of chances that they could just miss the playoffs entirely. And if that happens, then people are going to absolutely freak out.
Are the Eagles in that conversation for your top 5?
Yeah. I would say this is like off the top of my head. I haven't really thought about this that much. I would probably say Packers 1, Rams 2, Bucks 3, maybe Eagles 4, and then 5 would be like I think you have the Saints in there, you have the Cowboys in there, Vikings are 49ers. You know what? 49ers would probably be 5. I mean, there's just a lot of questions. There's a lot of unknowns in the NFC. There's a lot of teams that have gotten a lot of hype this offseason for a variety of different reasons, whether it's Trey Lance in San Francisco, Kevin O'Connell going to Minnesota. Then you have Jameis Winston coming back, and he was 5-2, and that defense is going to be good. I'm seeing too many people pick the Saints over the Bucks, and I get it that
they can beat the Bucks, but that's about it.
That's it. Yeah, and it's just like a lot of people are picking the Saints to win that division, and it's just I don't see it right now. I mean, losing Sean Payton is such a big loss. And yes, Winston started 5-2 last year, but that was a small sample size. What's to say he's not going to just revert back to his, gunsling ways where he's throwing back-breaking interceptions. So it's just the NFC is so intriguing. I mean, the AFC, you kind of know what you're going to get because all these teams have, established quarterbacks. But every NFC team, it seems, has questions aside from the Rams. But then you have like Stafford's, elbow inflammation. Is that gonna?
Apparently, he's better now. Like he's better than he was. But how many times have we heard that over the last month? He's better than he was last year.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So it's just the NFC is going to be fascinating because there are big questions with every single contender, and I think it's going to make for a great race.
This is my issue with the Saints. Did people forget how terrible of a coach Dennis Allen was the first time?
Yeah,
I don't get it. He was like 8-24 or something. He might have been even worse than 8-24, but he wasn't a good coach. And I still think they made the wrong hire. I think it should have been he stays as defense coordinator and they elevate Pete Carmichael and they just kind of run the ship. And maybe they're still doing that in a sense, but I don't know. It's the whole Dennis Allen. Same with Josh McDaniels. The whole vibe to me, it's just I don't like those guys as coaches, and I can't believe they got second chances as coaches.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's just, you're better as in McDaniel's case, offensive coordinator or a defense coordinator. And that's just the role where you thrive. And given more responsibility, it takes away from your ability to, one, coach the defense, and two, it just takes a certain kind of person that can be head coach in the NFL. And the track record is not good. And that's not to say they're going to be terrible because they could, there's some guys that, weren't, obviously people bring up Belichick and, what he wasn't good until he got to the Patriots, but I get
until he got Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. None of these guys have Tom Brady, but yeah, I'm definitely skeptical. The Raiders are a very interesting team just because, is he going to be able to elevate the offense? Did they do enough on defense to hang with the Chiefs and Chargers? And I think if these guys, the thing with these, I feel like when you have new head coaches, they come in, or first year head coaches, they come in and the expectations are, tempered. And you're like, okay, as long as they're decent this year, but McDaniels, the Raiders got to perform this year. Dennis Allen, the Saints got to be good. If they're not, then that leash is going to be so short. And it's kind of similar with like Nathaniel Hackett too. I guess he has a little bit more of a leash with the Broncos, I think. But you have a lot of coaches in year one that there's a lot of pressure to perform it, and these fan bases have playoff expectations, which isn't usually what happens when you have a first year coach. It's kind of like, okay, we're gonna build this thing from the ground up, kind of like what the Giants are. They're still tearing it down right now, but what the Giants are doing. So that's going to be. We'll see what happens with those teams, and if they're not performing well, whether or not those leashes become very short, and those organizations don't give those coaches the time to really try to turn it around because they're in win now mode.
I keep telling Giants fans this, and they know this. This isn't their year. It's not supposed to be their year. I wouldn't even be believing in Daniel Jones at this point because I think they already made their decision. Quite honestly, with him.
Yeah, the thing with the Giants, and it's like bad to say because the season's 3 days away, but like I think best case scenario for Giants fans is that like Daniel Jones turns out not to be the guy. Giants struggle. They have another bad year. They finish with a top 7, top 5 pick, and they go and get C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, or what other quarterback is going to jump up into that conversation. I think that's really the best case scenario because if Jones plays decent, then if you're looking at maybe a top 15 pick, and then you're not getting that quarterback that can really be a difference maker. So you're Giants fans, they don't want to hear this, but it's like if they lose and if the season doesn't unfold how they want it to unfold, and they're not trying to fight for a playoff spot, then I think you have to be content with them to kind of just ride out the season. And at the end of the day, you want a high pick because they had two top 7 pick last year, and you got guys that you hope to be difference makers. But if you turn one of those picks into a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young, and you give the new Giants brass some more cap space, then you're building something. So I think it's going to be interesting with Jones, and it's like what does he have to do to get an extension? He would have to do some crazy stuff. Like he would have to have insane stats. I feel like
It had to be like a Patrick Mahomes type season.
it would have to be like it would have to be a season that is past what everyone thought his ceiling would be, and I just don't think that happens. I just don't want to see the Giants go 7-10 and miss out on a quarterback that could be their guy for the next 10 years.
Before I let you go, Dave Gettleman to me was a special kind of GM. The Giants sucked when they hired Dave Gettleman. Somehow he made them worse. What do you think is Dave Gettleman's legacy right now in New York?
It's just, I mean, overpaying guys who turned out to be pretty crappy. It's just that was like the best thing that happened this past year is that not even like Joe Judge, is the fact that Gettleman got out of there, because it was him that was giving these contracts to these players that just that didn't deserve it. It was him. The Giants miss on Devonta Smith in the 2021 draft, and then they go ahead and reach for Kadarius Toney and Toney. I mean, if he's healthy,
like a Parsons. That's the irony of the whole thing.
Yeah, they miss out on like just home run guys and just people that are obvious because Gettleman's like, oh, I need this guy, I need that guy. And so, yeah, his legacy is exactly what you said. He came in with an organization that, had been pretty crappy, and he made them worse. And I think that the best thing that happened this past offseason was him being let go, because you can see that the new GM just has such a better feel, and it's just a competent person that's in charge of the organization. It's simple. It's similar to Washington when they had Bruce Allen, and he was so buddy with Schneider, and you heard these stories about Schneider making picks from his yacht and all that, and it's just that's not like, just get an adult in the room that's going to make competent football decisions. And I think the Giants and Washington with Martin Mayhew, they at least have that now, and that's a step in the right direction, even if they're not the best GMs in the league.
It's funny because the Giants and Washington, you can say they have more stable front offices than the Cowboys right now, which is as long as Jerry runs that ship, I don't think Cowboys are doing it.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, because it's just when you get the owner so involved in the team, I feel like good things just never happen.
No.
Like you just gotta let the coach, let the GM make his decisions. These are the guys that are grinding the tape and do like they work their way up for 30 years, and then you have an owner that thinks he's an expert on football coming in and saying, oh, maybe we should draft this guy. It's just that the dynamic sometimes is what really screws these teams over, and we'll see if even going back to the Colts and Irsay really quick. It's just he was the one who basically was like, hey, we gotta get Carson Wentz out of here. We got to get Matt Ryan. And it's like, would that have been the decision of Reich and Ballard? Like, probably. But, like, you're talking about another owner who is kind of getting in the way of what their guys who are supposed to be decision makers want to do with the team. So, yeah, I agree with you on Jerry. That's a really good point. And I think to wrap up, it's going to be an interesting NFC East, because all these teams could be better than we expected, but it could also just be a crapshoot again.
Kyle, I got to get you on again. I got to get the whole CBS cast on here. I got Sully on tomorrow. Once again, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Hoping to hop back on once we've played a couple games and we can react to stuff instead of just speculating.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming on again, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
All right, and I got to give a tribute to Joey McDowell. We're going to put a bow on the show right after this.